So let's start with the Shanti Mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gradhitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitaamrutavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambattvamanusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini. We have come to the 9th chapter. Atha Navamodhyayaha Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yogaha. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Idam Tute Guhyatamam Pravakshamyanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajñatva Mokshase Shubhat Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartrum Avyayam. Ashraddhana Purushaha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Aprapya Mam Nivartante Mrityu Samsara Vartmani. The Lord said, Bhagavan Vacha, Idam Tute Guhyatamam Pravakshamyanasuyave. To you, hey Arjuna, who is devoid of the doubting, carping, disturbing spirit, I shall now unfold the most secret knowledge of Nirguna Brahma along with the knowledge of manifest divinity. Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam. That means to say the knowledge about the world outside, manifest world, and the knowledge behind both these things. Yajñatva mokshase shubhat, along with the knowledge of the manifest divinity, knowing which you shall be free from the evil of the worldly existence. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidam Uttamam Pratyakshavama Avakamam Dharmyam Sukarmam Kartrum Avyayam. This knowledge, that means both the knowledge about Vidya and then about Jnana and then Vijnana, aspects of the divinity, is a sovereign science. It's a supreme science, Rajavidya. And also it's a Rajaguhyam. It's an extraordinary, wonderful secret. Supremely holy. And that's what they says, that Pavitram and Uttamam, most excellent and directly enjoyable, Pratyaksha Avagamam, directly that you can reach that and attended with virtue. Dharmyam Susukham Kartrum Avyayam. Very easy to practice, and it's also Avyayam. It is imperishable. Ashraddhana Purushaha Dharmasyasya Parantapa. Hey Arjuna, hey Parantapa, people having no faith in this dharma, people having no faith in dharma, failing to reach me, ashraddhadhana, those who do not have shraddha, purushaha, dharmasyasya parantapa, they don't have shraddha and dharma, they don't have commitment for dharma. Aprapyamam nivartante, revolve in the path of world of mrityu samsara vatmani. They go around in the mrityu samsara, the samsara which is connected with the mrityu. In that case, such persons will go in that direction. So let us look into these three sutras in this particular chapter of the ninth Rajaguhya Rajavidya Yoga. So the very idea that Guhyam is something which is secret, which is very special and also very secret. But then he says here, Guhya Tamam. It's not just only Guhya, but it is Guhya Taram, and then beyond that is Guhya Tamam. Such a knowledge, Pravakshyami, I'm going to tell about Anasuyave. This Anasuyave is a very important word that we need to understand. Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam. It's not only the Jnana, but it is Vijnana Sahita Jnana. Why he has used this, both these things also very important to understand. Yajnatva and Yajnatva Mokshase Shubhat. Ashubhat Mokshase. And this is also another thing that we need to understand very deeply. Now, Pravakshyami Anasuyave, that means to say, it's an adjective for Arjuna who says that Anasuyave, that means who does not have any blemish. Dosha, there is no dosha in his approach, and also that you have the bhakti within you. Therefore, dosha, without any dosha, but at the same time that you have bhakti. And such a person, I'm going to tell this, Guhyatamam Jnanam, extraordinary, wonderful knowledge. Now, here that few points that we need to understand, that what is this knowledge that he is talking about? Why at this point of time, in the ninth chapter, 8, he brings about, previous 8 chapters, he did not bring about this particular knowledge, which means basically there should be some element of preparedness for getting into this knowledge. And probably it is the time that ninth chapter, by the time Krishna came to ninth chapter, Arjuna has a preparedness for graduating into this particular knowledge. That's why Krishna is directly telling this. Now, this is another important aspect, is that as it is in the 8th chapter itself, there is something which is extraordinary ideas that he has given. He did not even wait for Arjuna to question, because something which is much deeper, much higher, question is not there. Questions are always there about the material world outside. What you see, material world, what it results from, and where it starts. So these are all the questions which are related to the material world outside. And these questions are coming from the intellect. Intellect can only put the questions which is there connected with the material objects that is there outside. Intellect is useful only at that level. Intellect is not beyond that. So therefore, what he is talking about is something which is beyond the level of intellect. That means there are two different types of knowledge that is there. One is the knowledge which is limited to the intellect level, and up to which that intellect can go. And there is another knowledge which is beyond the level of intellect. Now, right from the beginning that our education starts in the world outside, we are always there to use the intellect. And because of the intellect only that we understand, and the journey continues. Intellect can take to that far, but then after certain distance, then there is something which is beyond the intellect, that you feel it, and that's you experience it, but then you cannot, it's not belonging to intellect. That is the knowledge that is supposed to be something which is a secret knowledge. Now he says that Guhyatamam, the idea is that, before that, let me get into this idea of, there is certain preparedness I was talking about that you need to relate to Arjuna here. What is the preparedness of Arjuna? It is that he has exhausted all the intellectual journey, intellectual way of looking at it, intellectual approach of going to it. That. What is the intellectual approach? There are two types of knowledge that is there. One is the way that you try to decipher and try to understand it. You try to separate it out and try to understand. This is what is extraordinary about intellect. In fact, basically, when you look at this, the science today, in the beginning, the science said that it should be very neutral. That means to say, whatever that the idea that is given is something which is applicable to everywhere, everything. That means you don't bring in your personality into it. So it should be absolutely neutral. The science did not want the man's interference in the science so that it will become neutral. So this is how that they wanted to do that, and that's how they moved further. But then what happened? There was a time when it came, they went on they dissecting and all that, and then they come to a level where it has become like a atom, the smallest of the particle. But then what happens is the atom itself is something that they cannot see with the help of even the instrument that they were there or the senses that were there. So one knowledge is that what you see, perceive through the senses directly, and this is one knowledge. Even that has to be explained, that has to be related, correlated, and all these things have to be done. So this is how the intellect tries to help us to take us into. But then what happens next is the one that's very important thing is that there are certain, behind this there is a knowledge, and that unless until that you go through certain subtle instruments, etc., then you will not get into that. But then that is what is the part of the reality. But still you can magnify it, you can amplify it, and you can bring it to the fold of the senses. So this is what is the knowledge that is there hidden behind it. Knowledge manifests outside, but the knowledge that is hidden behind it, and this itself is secret knowledge. But then guhya tamam, and that is something which is much deeper than that. And what is that guhya tamam? And it is very deep inside. That means to say, any amount of instrument that you bring it to the level of intellect, it will not be able to understand that. Not only that you have transcended the senses, but also you have to transcend the intellect. After all, intellect is also another sense that you have. Like the way eyes are there, ears are there, and all that. So beyond that, you are going to see that there is guhyam, that is the deeper knowledge that you are going into, secret knowledge. But beyond that, if you have to go, that means to say not only these senses that you have to go beyond, but also that you have to go beyond the support of the intellect. And that kind of a knowledge where you stop the intellect also, you go beyond. And that's what is supposed to be the guhya tamam knowledge. And Arjuna is prepared for that. That is what is the idea that he has to be. And then Arjuna is given like that. But preparation can be in two ways. That means to say your very approach towards the knowledge can be with the skepticism. And this is what is the idea of the people who are atheists. Atheists approach the things with the skepticism. So therefore, that atheists can never understand something which is beyond, basically because that they are skeptical about the whole thing. You try to answer anything, and then they only find out the negative aspect of it or the wrong aspect of it. That is what their very approach is with that skepticism. But then there is something which is beyond, without the skepticism. That's what we need to go. The science tried to look into that very neutrally, absolutely neutrally. But then what happened? Science also went into this kind of a difficulty. Then as they went deeper and deeper beyond the atom, then they went to electron, and then subatomic particles. That when they started getting into, they found out that the knowledge is always associated with the observer. The observer cannot be separated from that. The observer is involved. Now, when the observer is involved in that much subtler level of knowledge that you are looking at, you mean to say at the grosser level that the observer interference is not there? It is also there at the gross level. Only thing is, we did not we isolated that part of it, what is actually the way that the observer interferes with that, or the observer influences that. So let me give you that idea, that how what we have ignored about that is, whenever you observe something like a flower or something like that, immediately say the flower is beautiful. The flower is beautiful for your eyes. That means to say you are looking at with a type of psychology, with a type of frame of mind. There it looks beautiful, but the same thing may not look beautiful to you, somebody else. Why? Because his frame of mind is different, and he's busy with something else. So therefore what happened is that this your interference is not there, and is still there, but only thing is that aspect we have ignored. That aspect we have ignored. And this, when you look at it in the whole world, in every transaction, this aspect is constantly there. Only thing is we suppressed it. We ignored it in means that we suppressed it. And just always this idea is there, like a fruit that you like, somebody else might not like it, or the fruit that you like in one particular state of mind, in another state of mind you may not like it. So that means to say your state of mind, your approach, all these things are totally different. You touch an object with a particular sense that you touch an object, and it gives a very gentle, soft touch. Whereas somebody else touches the object, it does not give the same kind of a thing. And this particularly you can see in the case of children, how much that they are guided by the small little simple things that are there. Like for example, the mother's pallu, they hold it when they sleep. And they also have to have a thumb in their tongue, in their mouth when they sleep. And the chewing of the thumb and the mother's pallu are the kind of a um, doll that they carried. This, it has a special touch, it has a special approach, special thing for that particular child. So the child has all those things, so that the child responds to that in the world outside. How can you separate the child from the world outside? It's not just only the doll, any doll, but it is that particular doll, the child can connect with that. And this is what at gross level that you can see in the case of a child, in the case of a doll. But at subtle level, that your own interference is there. When you want to look at the subatomic particle, whether it moves in the form of a wave or in the form of a solid object. So both these things are possible. And only thing is that your way of looking at it is the one that makes it whatever different that is there. So therefore, that interference of the individual cannot be ruled out. Now, when you cannot rule out the interference of the individual, what is that which is the influence that individual is casting? That's not something which is available for the intellect, and that's what is the whole gamut of an area which is supposed to be our shraddha and our relationship with that object, relationship with an individual. These are the things that is there. Now, this is what is actually the way. And what happens is another thing is, that is how it integrates you into the world outside, like the way that the child integrates the object as a part of it, the doll as a part of him, a part of her, is the way that it connects. So this is what is the idea, that anasuyave, that means dosharahita. That means to say you have not eliminated, you have not truncated, you have not looked at eliminating certain portion of it. It's like this, that you are looking at the sky through the window. Then when you look at the window, you see that there is window frame and all that, and then you think that the sky is limited to that window. But whereas on the other hand, when you remove that perception, look at the sky, don't look at the window, then what happens is that you look at the sky aspect of it, but not the window aspect of it. This is what the way that you perceive it, gestalt. What you want to see, you will see that. And if you are in a good state of mind, there's in gestalt analysis that there is one thing, a picture that is there in one way, when you look at from one angle, you look at it, a beautiful young girl is there. But from another angle that you look at it, there is an old woman. Both these things are there in that. But the way that you look at it, and then you can see that. A young person looks at that picture, he sees the young girl. But the old man looks at that, he sees only the old woman, because that he will not respond to this kind of a thing. So that means there is an influence of him that is there, and he eliminated that when he is looking at from the intellect point of view, you are inquiring. And there is another very important, this is what is called as dosha rahita. That means including what you are, in the sense that dosha is finding fault, and dosha rahita is the way that you look at it without finding fault. That means to say, as long as that you have complaint in the world, then the world looks in a different way. And every complaint brings about a question for you, and it is not going to accept it. And the way that you question at that point of time is to see that how you can defeat the other person, you can disagree with the other person. That's why you question. Whereas the way that really a questioning is to see that how you can humbly get more deeper knowledge into it. So without the doubt, with the doubt, you can question until the point that the science takes you to the material world. But if you want to travel beyond that, this question should be without any doubt. In fact, there is one author by name Finn, and he has written a book, the Mr. God I'm Anna. There, very beautifully, that Anna explains about this, saying that these questions, what, how, why, when, these are all the things, questions with a question mark, but they can also be the words with exclamatory mark. And this is something which is extraordinary. When you have a question mark, that means to say you are doubting, you are questioning. When did you come? That means to say you are trying to find out exactly the time, date, and then you want to prove or disprove something or the other. Where the moment that it is with exclamatory mark, that means to say you are questioning with the sense of wonder, and you are questioning with that idea. So this is what is the way that your journey is without any question. That's what is doubt. So when it is called as without any doubt, and that is what essentially it is called as the way that it is dosha rahita. So dosha rahita, when you go, or in a clear word, when you say that with the dosha is when you go from the point of your head, intellect, whereas dosha rahita is when you go with the help of heart. The whole idea is let's go from the heart when you look at the world in a different way. So now, until 8th chapter, Arjuna was approaching with the help of intellect. That's why Krishna was also clearing all his doubts from the intellect point of view. Any number of doubts you clear with the help of intellect, fine. All those things are belonging to the material world. But existential doubts are the things which you cannot clear with the help of intellect. You have to rise above that, you have to transcend about that. And that's what is basically what we require from the point of view of heart. So head became so important, intellect became so important. Many times what happens is intellect overrules the heart. Intellect says that heart, we have no business in this world outside. So that's how basically heart has been denied. And this question continues like that. So therefore, essentially, that this whole idea that is given here is from the point of view of the higher purpose and deeper level, and that only you can get it from the level of emotions. And that's where basically, what is that emotion that we have? Only one emotion that we have, and that emotion is of the love, compassion. This is what he says in the idea of you are a bhakta. Now, it's a beautiful idea about this concept. It is Anasuyava is this one whose vision is without any doubt, but at the same time, is also bhakta. Bhakta, normally it is translated as somebody who is a devotee in English. And this has nothing to do with the devotion at all. And the moment that we say bhakta or devotee, immediately a god, immediately puja and mantras and all those things, that comes into the mind. But when he's talking about that Rajaguhya, it is not about the puja, it's not about the god, it's not about the temple or the ritual that they do. But what is it by bhakta? In fact, in Sanskrit, we have such a beautiful word. When you divide it, it is called as vibhakti. Vibhakti means actually division. Vibhakti means actually uh, um, it is a division or the other side. That means opposite to vibhakti is bhakti, and bhakti is integration. Bhakti is putting them together. Bhakti is looking at them, not even just putting together, but without dividing, looking at that. Like yesterday, I was also saying in another occasion that the rose, when you give a beautiful rose, you divide that into various parts of it. Then all those parts you just put them together does not become the original rose. It is still much, much lesser than the rose itself. Without dividing, when you look at the rose, then you see beauty of the rose. So the beauty of the rose is that you accept that there is all, when divide, all these things will be there, but don't divide that, but look at it in a total way. When they're putting together, what is that extraordinary thing that you'll get? So that is what basically is the idea of bhakta. That means opposite to vibhakti. It is not being divided, but it is an integrated way, as it is holistic way. When you look at it, that's what is the way that vibhakti are the way of bhakti. So this is what is the idea of anasuya way. That means to say without any dosha drishti, but at the same time with the attitude of bhakti. That means trying to see in a holistic way everything. Like, you know, how beautifully a mother looks at the child in a holistic way. The child cries, and then he take the child to the some friend's place, and then he throws the object, and then he breaks the things. You know what the mother is? Mother does not say that, oh child, you are bad, you are this, you are that, like that. All the child says, I think that he needs to feed, and he's missing home, we have to go home and feed him. Here he will not eat food, whereas there he will eat food. That means to say he looks at that from the holistic point of view. Children also look at it in a holistic way. It's a very beautiful thing to see that how these children, they're so innocent, normal, simple. This is what is actually idea of bhakti, opposite of bhakti. I just recollect an incident that happened when my son Amrit was very small, but 7, 8 year old, and he used to go to a school, Valley School. And one day I went some work in Malleshwaram, and then while coming back, went to my friend's place just to say hello to them because I have gone to Malleshwaram. So therefore, he was there with me. It was lunchtime, afternoon. And then, that friend, my friend's wife, she said, can I give something to eat or drink? I said, no, you go home because it's lunchtime, we'll have lunch. I said, okay, for Amrit, can I have something for the little kid? I said, no, he will also go home and have it. Lunch. No, I'll give him a glass of milk. I said, no, lunch, he will have it. Then she said, I will give lunch. My idea was that if I give lunch, then he'll make a mess of the whole thing. So I said, let's go home. Whatever mess is there, we'll have it at home. But then she said, look, everything you are answering, let him answer. Okay, ask. Then she asked, he said, I will have lunch. Oh, God. Now the headache starts, I thought. And then she made nice plate and all that, and then served him lunch. He was eating so neatly. And then her son was sitting next to Amrit, watching Amrit eating so neatly. And then she looked at, I was surprised because he did not create a mess there. I was happy at least about that. But on the other hand, my friend's wife, she said to her son, said, look at Amrit, how nicely he's eating. And whereas you make a mess of the whole thing. I was feeling very bad that their son is getting a bad name for that. But then he was very cool. Actually, he was also same as Amrit said. He said very simple thing. After all, Amrit is eating in somebody else's house. See, look at the way that how the children have that idea. This total looking at from the totalistic view. Bhakti always looks at that integrated way, totalistic view. And that's what is the way Arjuna is now looking. See, this is something which leads him into the Bhakti Yoga chapter. Therefore, this 9th chapter is something where basically this turn towards the Bhakti started. And that is the way he says, Anasuyantaha, Anasuyave, idam guhyatamam. It's a very secret knowledge. Secret knowledge, not because the knowledge is secret, but the secret knowledge is because that first thing is that your intellect, you cannot keep it aside for knowledge. How can we get a knowledge by keeping the intellect aside? Is the way that you look at it. But then there is a knowledge that without intellect that you can get into. That itself is a big thing. And second thing is, Guhyam is something, whatever that intellectually you analyze and propose and all those things, that's what is Guhyam. The Guhyatamam, it is something which is much deeper than that. That means not only the senses you put aside, but you also put the intellect aside and look into that. Then it is, and whatever that knowledge that it is there, it is Vijnana Sahitam. That means to say that we already have all this knowledge that is there. It doesn't deny the world outside. In fact, world inclusive, world included. All that is respected. It's not disrespected. It's not opposite to that. Though the purpose is to transcend that, but it is not opposite to that. In fact, those who deny the normal level of intellect, they cannot reach the bhakti. That's one of the reasons why bhakti, many people think that it's an easy path. Very easily we can go, I can't analyze all those things, and then all that Brahman stuff is something which is very difficult for me. Therefore, I will go to the temple, I'll do the bhajan, I will go around the God. And periodically, weekly or monthly, that I go to the temple, I break the coconut and I do all those things, so that bhakti is easy path. Bhakti is simple thing. Therefore, that they try to deny the intellect. But by denying the intellect, you cannot go to the bhakti. Because basically what happens is that you can never deny the intellect. When you try to transcend the intellect and then go beyond, then what happens is intellect is there, only suppressed. Like the way that other senses are suppressed, the same way that you suppress the intellect also. And when you suppress the intellect and then you go to the bhakti aspect of it, then any small little question that comes up, somebody asks some doubt, expresses some this thing, immediately you flare up. You will become angry and you will say that, look, you are a Nastika, you don't believe in God, therefore it is like that. So all these questions come up because the simple reason is that you have denied the intellect. If you have actually transcended the intellect into the bhakti, then nothing will really disturb you, because it knows very well that it is beyond the level of intellect. There is some level where the intellect can go, but bhakti is something which goes beyond the intellect. In fact, when I was one time giving a talk in Stanford University, all the students who are there are, nothing less than IIT, Delhi, IIT, Chennai, and all those people, that highly intellectual. Most of them are Indians. And then they wanted to have I said, should I give a lecture on Indian philosophy or question answers? They said, we prefer question answers, because we already know, we are from India, a lot of things we know. So we'd like to have question answers. So then I said, okay, but let me give briefly 10 minutes of introductory talk. And once I gave the introductory talk, after that, then the questions they started. And the questions they started, I started answering all the questions that were there. And they were very happy, very pleased. Almost like 1.5 hours they spent. 1 hour period was there and 1.5 hours that we talked. They were really excited about the whole thing. And finally they said that, we have so logical, so rational kind of philosophy and everything that is there, Indian culture, Indian philosophy. But are we not, why do we have this blind faith? People go to the temple, go to the God, and then all this worship that they do it. It's a blind faith. So how people can follow it? How people? I said, yes, blind faith itself is bad. Especially a blind faith. Of all these things, most horrible blind faith is a blind faith that intellect can solve all your problems. That is a blind faith. What are you sure that there is knowledge which is beyond the level of intellect? You never know about it. But the only thing is that you are committed to intellect because you have a blind faith. So bhakti belongs to that category where you have to transcend the intellect. You transcend all the doubts. And that's what is the level, that's what is the case of Shraddha. And once you reach that state, then all this bhakti, everything will be there. It's not by denying the knowledge, but it is transcending the knowledge, that intellect, that's what is important. So that's why it is jnanam, vijnana sahitam, vijnana together, we take care of it. But then this is something which is the knowledge, which is transcending the intellect about that. So people who deny the intellect, they will not be able to get into the bhakti. People who suppress the intellect, are they do not care for the intellect, they are not eligible for bhakti. That's the reason why Arjuna exhausted all the questions of Arjuna, finished all that before the 8th chapter is over. 8th chapter is the last one. After that, now Krishna goes to the level where it is essentially the idea of jnana vijnana sahitam. That's the knowledge he is coming to, which leads him into the idea of reaching or approaching Krishna with the question of now the idea of Shraddha. And that's what we poorly translate into English as faith. But faith is not a very easy kind, is not proper kind of a translation, but we don't have a better word. Therefore, we say Daya. And whatever that happens is, once you understand this aspect of it, this jnana vijnana aspect of it, the jnana sahita jnana aspect of it, that means which is a knowledge which is transcending the intellect aspect of it, yajnatva pravakshamitam yajnatva ashubhat mokshase ashubhat. That means to say ashubhat, it is the the world is world, everything is there in this world. What happens is that we are constantly, in this world, it's a mixture of everything that is there. Each has its own purpose. Like, for example, if you take the banana peel is also functional to keep the banana intact, and the fruit inside is banana. Coconut, you take it, the hard shell is there outside, and then inside water is there. Shell is doing its job, water is doing its job. Like that in this nature, in this whole creation, everything is there, having its own purpose, having its own work, and it's happening. But what happens is that we try to like one thing and then we hate the other thing. We try to create, one is the Shubha and the other is Ashubha. One is what is important, another is something which is rejected. This is very seriously that happens the moment that you come to the path of spirituality. I also used to do that at one point of time. I said that this is all nonsense talk. I don't want to get involved in that. There's worldly talk. People are engaged in that. So I used to hate that. I used to find out that all these talks are something which is not. They don't even talk about spirituality. They don't talk about God. They don't talk about something which is pious, or at least value-based and all those things. I always used to find fault with that. Suddenly one day it appeared. When God created everything, who am I to say that it is rejectable? There is nothing rejectable. That day when I found out that how beautiful the world is. World has so many things. Yes, I pick up what is necessary for me and then I go ahead. It does not mean that I have to find fault with the other. Leave that alone. Just ignore that. You go ahead. Long time ago, when there was a conference in Washington, D.C., I was there. And our Kanyakumari Rock Memorial President, Lakshmi Kumariji, was there. We were going around and there were so many shabby things in that particular arrangement of the conference. She said something very touching, very beautiful. She said, Raghu, look at everything, whatever that is nice things that you can adapt in your conference. And what is not good here, then ignore them. See how beautiful that simple idea is. Say, Ashubhat mokshase. That means to say, whatever that is dosha drushti earlier we have said, and the same thing here, Ashubha. Finding fault with that, and what is negative, these are the things that you come out of it. Mokshase Ashubhat. That means to say, this world which has got continuously negativity, which has got sickness in that, bad in that, all that you will be able to transcend that. Ashubhat Mokshase, you're freed from that. What happens in this world is that there is something positive, there is something negative, but always the sum total of positive, negative is something which destroys. Later also we will get into one of the chapters this discussion. And whatever that is positive is something which sustains this world. So whatever the negative is, that whatever destroys this world. But the sum total of positive is always more than the sum total of negative. Therefore, the world is surviving. We are all there because the sum total of positive is always there. The survival forces are much more than the destructive forces. Daivi Sampat is more than the Asuri Sampat. Therefore, that we are able to pursue this kind of a thing in this world. So, Ashubhat Moksha say, when it happens like that, then this whole the whole life becomes so wonderful, so blissful. Every moment is like the way that you are worshipping the divinity because you are seeing the divinity. There is nothing higher than that. That's what is the idea of Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshavagaman Dharmyam Susukam Kartrum Avyayam. This is what is Rajavidya. Why is it Rajavidya? Because the moment that you look at this beauty of the world, something which is enchanting, nice about this world, and then that is connected with the highest level of knowledge that is there within you, and that is supposed to be Rajavidya, a knowledge which is the royal kind of a knowledge that is there, and Rajaguhyam, and also it's very secret knowledge. Not everybody will know about it. Only thing is, once you know that the highest degree of whatever that they have in the kingdom, that they have the spice, and they give very special knowledge to the king. Nobody else will have that knowledge. The secret, the deep rooted secret, and not only that, it's a long uh, measured kind of a thing. And that is something which is Rajaguhyam and Rajavidya. And what is that? Pavitram. And it is something which is sacred. This knowledge is something which is very sacred. Sacred in the sense that there is one level what you say is that, let me give a simple example of untruth. Rising from the untruth level to the truth is the next level. We learn that untruth is bad, therefore I should tell the truth. A lie is bad, so I should tell the truth. So that consciously that I keep telling the truth. And when consciously I keep telling the truth, there is some degree of untruth. Degree of untruth which is hanging at the back of it. Whereas an untruth which does not have a truth which does not have the burden of untruth or the shadow of untruth that is there, that's what is called as pavitram. It's an extraordinarily wonderful thing. So therefore, that this is what is pavitram and uttamam pavitram. It's an extraordinarily wonderful pavitra. Idea is like the way that the sky, the space is something which you can never contaminate it. Similarly, the water that is flowing, you cannot contaminate it because the water is something, an agent, which cleans everything. How can you make it dirty? Of course, our industries will make it dirty, but the idea is that the pure water, pure air, pure sky, these are the things which are supposed to be with the purity. And then when even the water, sky, air supposed to be pure, what must be the consciousness which is behind all those things? Is it not something which is extraordinarily pure? So atyantam pavitram and pratyakshaavagamam dharmyam. Now this is also another thing. Pratyaksha, that means to say direct perception. Akshi is that eyes that is used for, Akshi means basically our eye. Of all the senses, most powerful sense is the eye, the eyes. So therefore, they say representing all the senses that we say, that the eyes. But directly experiencing with all the senses put together, that means to say your mind, senses and the mind and the intellect, all those things, and all that thing, pratyaksha avagamam, that means as a direct fruit of all the sense perception that you have, and all that, and dharmyam. And that is one thing which is supposed to be of the dharma in its nature. Dharma itself is something which sustains this universe. Dharma is something which is original, and dharma is something which takes you towards the freedom. That's why we have in this Chaturveda Purushartha, Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. When you pass these Artha and Kama through Dharma, we get to do Moksha. And this is something which takes you towards that. Dharmyam, that means which is certainly has an attitude towards that Moksha. So dharmyam and kartum susukham avyayam. Now, this you are doing this sadhana by this knowledge, jnana vijnana, that means it is something that you can very easily approach to it. That's why it is susukham. It's very easy to approach that. All that what it requires is the idea of dosha rahita. If you do not have dosha within you, if there is no dosha behind it, if you have that shraddha behind it, and then you are the bhakta in actus aspect of it, susukham, and then this is avyayam. It is something which never dies, it never decays or anything like that. That means to say, until the senses, sense perception, and the intellect and all those things that are there, not only that objects that, whatever that pursued the objects and the results and the information that you have, it has a quality, it has a quality of vyaya. That means to say, today it is there, tomorrow it may not be there. One time it is there, one time it is not there. And not only that objects that are there has the vyaya quality, but even your senses which are giving the input also having this vyaya quality. That means to say, they also, eyes can perceive to some degree, after that the eyes do not perceive. The tongue taste simply changes as the time goes on. In fact, what happens is that we are trying to approach that state of going beyond all these senses and everything in a natural way also when you are going to die, going towards die. One after the other, that they start failing you. Therefore, your failure is going to happen in the senses, and not only senses, even your memory, in your analysis, all those things will come down. That's what is the signs of old age. As you go towards the old age, look at all these things that happen. Naturally, they happen. And you see that younger generation, they rule over the older generation, because that older generation do not have these things anymore. Younger generation developed all these things very fresh. Therefore, that this is what is vyaya. Whatever that is the information about the senses, it is vyaya. Whatever the information that you get from the intellect is also vyaya. Whatever the analysis that has given you the knowledge is also vyaya. And therefore, if you do not have that dosha drishti, freedom from the dosha drishti, if you do not have the freedom from that idea, if you do not have the idea of shraddha, then what happens is that these senses fail us and the knowledge fails us, but then we do not want to accept it. As a result of it, we always have a conflict within ourselves. And that's the reason what we say is the generation gap. The earlier generation fights with the newer generation, the older generation fights with the younger generation. Why? It's not because of anything else, but because the older generation knows that that's what is the truth, and younger generation know that this is the truth. So they are also genuine. These people are also genuine. But only thing problem is that the older generation have not accepted the way that they have to transcend this, their own knowledge, their own senses, their own all those things, and then they have to accept it. And this is what the whole idea is, not what you know it or what you do not know it, but what is more important thing is how to integrate it, how to bring them together, how to look at this holistically. And this is what is bhaktya, the idea of that looking at from the totalistic point of view. When you do that, then you have the sukham, that is what is harmony. And second thing is avyayam. And that means you are always fresh with the new ideas that are there and coming up. Ashraddhana Purusha, Dharmasyasya Parantapa, Aprapyamam Nivartante, Mritya Samsara, Vartvani. So now he brings about that concept of, I said Shraddha and Ashraddha, one who does not have a Shraddha. That means to say, his bhakti is not a true bhakti, it is a vibhakti. That means to say that his devotion towards God, his devotion to the ideas that are there, are also divisive in nature. They don't integrate anymore. That means they are already fossilized. They have become boundaried, and within that they function. This is what happens. Ashraddhadhana, somebody who has got, there is no shraddha in that, and dharmasya ashraddhadhana purusha. That means they can't see the dharma because they don't have the dharma. They don't have shraddha. And such people who are there, mam aprapya. See, they are so much into the world outside because they're rigid with their ideas, they are rigid with their intellect, they are rigid with their perception of the world, which they have seen long time ago. In their old age, now that it is something which is totally different. Lot of ideas like that. We don't move along with the time. We don't move along with the development that is taking place, growth that is happening. When we don't do that, then what happens is that we don't transcend the intellect, we don't transcend the mind, and we get caught up in this divinity. And therefore, he says, Mam aprapya. That's what he says. Aprapya mam nivartante. So that means to say, Mam aprapya. That means, however much that they become very religious and they're very devoted, in the sense of that they become, from the worldly point of view, they become theists, they become, ritual followers, and all those things may be there. In spite of all those things, if they did not have that, then Mam aprapya. That means they can never reach me. They feel that they are coming closer and closer, but then they are again in the peripheral level. They have not gone to the center. All these details, all these practices that are there at the peripheral level, they get caught up in the periphery. And mam aprapya, they never reach me into that. Nivartante mritya samsara vartmani. That means then mritya samsara. That means this whole world, which is supposed to be having the quality of mrita, the death aspect of it is naturally there. In that kind of a samsara, the word mrityu samsaram, vartmani, that means to say, they keep on going in the cycles of the death and the birth kind of a thing. So, one who does not reach me is the person that who is in this world outside. One who transcends this world, and transcending this world is not with the help of rituals, not with the help of going to the temples, not with the help of saying that, okay, now let me do bhakti because I could not do anything else, let me do bhakti. It is not that way. But understand that you need to transcend that in the way that you see that you have to become dosha drishti within you. A spiritual person is recognized because of this idea that he has absolutely no dosha drishti, and that's what is bhakti. He does not find fault with anything. That approach is not there. That is somebody who can reach that. Now, after saying that, Krishna now tries to see that what is that he is there in this world. See, as I said, the world has both these components, Daivi Sampat, Asiri Sampat, that is there. What is this aspect that is there, the divinity that you can see in this world? That's what Krishna comes to the next shlokas that we get into. Next time when we meet, we'll see that. Stop it here. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.
Namaste, Raghavji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you.